I built this medieval house with side stables in ARK Survival Ascended using the CKF Custom Cosmetics, so not the mod, although you should probably be able to do this with the mod as well if you'd rather use that, but it does mean that you can build this everywhere as long as you can use the cosmetic. Important to note is that with the CKF Cosmetics, the first two tiers are completely free, so the settler tier and the village tier, and if you want to use the keep tier for the stones, you'll need to buy the mod, not the cosmetic, because that is totally free, but it will also unlock the keep tier in the cosmetic version. Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another video here in ARK Survival Ascended. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to build this lovely medieval house. I quite like the way it turned out. It has different floors in the main building for you to use for whatever purposes you see fit, and a nice and cozy stable to the side to house some of your faithful tames. As always, if you enjoy seeing build videos like this and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. And of course, we'll start out with some foundations. We want to take out our foundations 4 wide for the main building and then make them 8 long in total. So it's a decently sized building to begin with. That's the space we need. Then over here on this side, we're going to go out by 2. We're going to go 4 wide before we tie it back into the main building. So this is just a little side building, and we can actually also, of course, fill in these shapes to make sure that we don't have to think about those anymore. Then here at the back, we want to go in by 1 and bring these out by 6 in total. Bring these out until it's 4 along the side here and bring it back into the main building again. And then we can also fill in these foundations all the way through. So this is the shape that you should end up with as the foundation for the entire building. And then the first thing we want to add is basically some stairs to get onto these foundations over here. This is going to be like a stable area. Then we can also add in some stairs right here in the middle of this side building. And we can add some stairs here in the front. I like to go for the staircase to give them a little bit more of a custom shape, a little bit more of a rounded staircase here, which I think looks really nice. And then if the landscape allows you, you can of course add some slope walls here to the sides of the stairs, as well as over here on this side. But again, very much depends on your landscape and how high your foundations are. Unless you can ghost into the ground, of course, then you can always add them later. And then, of course, we can change all of these to the keep tier if you have that unlocked. Otherwise, you can just keep it as normal stone, I suppose. But to make the most of this design, you'll definitely want to have all the tiers of CKF unlocked, which, even though the cosmetic is totally free, you need to buy the mod version of CKF, which also should unlock the keep tier in the cosmetic. So yeah, we just want to go around and make sure that we transfer all of these into the keep tier, just because it looks a lot nicer. And yeah, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. Don't forget about all the staircases around the build. And there we go. That is the start of our lovely building here. Then it's time to bring out our wooden pillars. We want to add 1 over here, and of course we can expand it back into the ground. We can leave a gap of 2 and add another 1, and then finally on the corner the final one. And we can do the same thing here on the front. We want to have a pillar 2 high here, 2 high here, and 2 high right over there. Then we can take out the walls, and here at the back we can start filling it in all the way through from one side to another. And then also the side of the building here, not over there, we can fill in all the way just to kind of close this off. And this is going to be the only entrance here to the stable area. Then we actually want to take out our wooden ramps, and we want to make sure that we snap them on top of these pillars. Sometimes getting the right snap can be difficult. You can have a temporary piece if it doesn't really want to work with you. It can also be a wall to make it even easier. And then we can have a layer of these ramps going all the way through in the front here, and we can make them stick out by one more here on the outside. Then over here at the back, we want to do the same thing. So we want to have one layer of ramps going all the way through, and again making them stick out here all the way over at the front. And then we want to have some shallow slope walls underneath to add some supports to this build, which we also want to do here on the other side of our building, just so that it all looks nice and supported. And then we can actually take out our variants here, the quarter ramps, and we can have them along the side. But in this case, we can actually make them meet up in the middle. So we kind of want to just continue these all the way through, and we can of course add them all the way along the edge here. That should get us a nice base shape for the roof for so far. And then finally, we also want to fill in this shape before we continue with the roof. We want to have some quarter walls right there in the middle, and then the next layer we can actually use full walls again. And on top of those walls, we can have some shallow slope walls again to create another little roof shape, because we will add some extra details on top of here. We can have a pillar there, leave a gap of 2, and leave another gap of 2. Again, just to build up this building a bit more. We'll do the same thing over here on the opposite side, just like this. And then we want to take out the walls again, and we actually want to fill in all the sides of this layer with our walls. It's going to look a little bit silly now, but once we skin them, it's going to look pretty nice. Then we can take out our ramps again. We can go all the way across the top here. The same on the opposite side from start to finish. Then we want to take out our quarter pieces again, and we can add them here alongside the edge, just to give this a bit of an overhang, make it look a little bit nicer. We can do the exact same thing here on the front, as well as, of course, on the opposite side of the building, just to make sure that this looks a lot nicer. There we go. And then here on the inside, we actually want to continue these slope walls up like this, and then we can continue them back down on the other side, just to create some kind of supports. We can do the exact same thing here on the opposite side of the building, all the way through to the other side. And then what we want to do is take out our half pillar and add them right there in the middle, just to create a new snap point, so we can have our beams going across the top layer here for some additional details. And we should be able to take that all the way across from one side to the other. We can also have some beams going off to the side right there, just to make sure that this stable area looks very nice and detailed. And now, of course, it's time to transform it with our skins. So first of all, we want to start with these scaffolding skins. Make sure to rotate them so you get some very nice shapes, and we can do the very end of the building here. And then we want to repeat this kind of pattern over here at the side. It adds a lot of open air, of course, just makes it look a little bit nicer in my opinion. And then we can continue that pattern over here on this side too, of course. We can actually also fill this pattern with these shallow wall pieces, so they look like some proper supports here for this part of the stables. And don't forget to go along the outside here and add them all the way here at the back of the building as well. There we go. Then we can take out our normal settler skin here, and we can transfer those pillars. We can transform those over here as well. And then, of course, we can change all of these beams and pillars on the inside to make sure that these details look a lot nicer. And now you'll see there's a lot of light already coming in through those open parts we created. We can, of course, change the roof of this build as well, making sure that we get that looking nice. I really like the textures here of the settler tiers. One of my favorite tiers, actually, even though it's supposed to be like the cheapest tier. I just really like the textures on these, and we want to do this for the entire roof, of course. You can see how much it already changes the look and the vibe of the build. Then it's time to add in some windows. You have a bunch of variants with different looks for the walls. I quite like this one with those two supportive pillars. And here at the very back of the building, we also want to add a bunch of these windows in just to open up the look a little bit. Then for the back, it's quite easy. We're going to, of course, change these pillars to or settler tier. Then up here, we can create a little bit of a pattern with these walls just to make them look a little bit more interesting like that. We can, of course, also change the look of the pillars here on the front of the building. There we go. And then finally, of course, we got the look of this wall. So here, again, we can kind of make some nice patterns, but then this one in the middle, I would keep the normal clean variant. We can, of course, have all supportive beams going on here as well. And then finally, I would just have some clean walls there in the middle. That already looks quite nice. And then finally, of course, what we want to do is make sure that we change all of these roof pieces to, or ramp pieces, into a roof so that the whole stable area looks nice and detailed now, and definitely is transformed from the vanilla look. There we go. We have a very cozy little stables building here off to the side where you can have a bunch of your tames safely on the inside. Then from one side addition to the next one, we're going to start on this side of the building here, and we're going to again add pillars going up to be too high. We can do the same thing over here, and then we can start filling in the walls here at the very front. We can do the same thing over here at the side, and the same thing over on the other side there. Then we want to change or take out our quarter walls here and have 4 of them right here so that we can have a nice door in the middle, double doors. And then finally, of course, what we need is some quarter walls here, and then some shallow slope walls going up into the main building like this. And then finally, we can, of course, add in our roof. We want to create a little bit of an overhang here on the outside with all quarter pieces coming nicely along the entirety here. And then, of course, take out our actual ramps and fill in the middle right over here, just like that. And of course, adding in the doors themselves. Then we want to add some windows over here. We're going to do them a little bit higher up. And then on the front, we want to have them right there in the corners. We can take out the settler skin and change these. We can, of course, have some nice supports here on the side. We can also have some of these support in here. I'm just kind of creating some patterns. You can really do whatever you prefer, but I always quite like the look of these, so we'll have those around like that. And then finally over here, of course, we can also change these looks. I'd probably go for the clean look right next to the door, and then of course we can have some more supports here. You can choose whether you want to continue those supports or maybe have some clean looks in the middle. It's all to your personal preference, but that's another side addition here for the main building. So now it is definitely time to move on to the main building. We want to take out our pillars. We can of course expand them into the ground, and we want to raise them up to be too high here on the front, and we can also have them right over here to break up that pattern a little bit. And we actually want to do the exact same thing here on the back of the building. So again, we're going to raise up those pillars by too high. We're going to have a pillar going in by 1 and another too high pillar right in those places. And then here on the sides, we want to leave gaps of 2 before we add in some more pillars to add the supports here for the sides of the building. There we go. Then first of all, we can take out a little doorway here. We can add that right over there, so you have some access to that side building. And we probably want to do the same thing right over here, so you can also access that side of the build. Then we actually want to take out our full walls, and we can fill in this entire bottom bit of the building all the way through, except for these ones in the middle at the bottom. We want to keep those open for now. We can do the tops though, and we can fill in all the way around here. And then we can do the very same here at the back of the building. And here at the front, of course, what we want to do is have some quarter walls before we add in a nice double door in the middle and fill in the actual doors too. Okay, so then we can take out the keep windows skins here, and we can actually add some windows on the corners here so that we can have a little bit of light coming in. We can do the same thing here on those corners at the back, and then pretty much everything else we can just kind of start to fill in. Obviously, we also want to make sure that we add in doors to these over here. But yeah, then the rest of this, we can just make sure to change all of those textures to the keep tier. I like to go for the rounded door here in the front, and then we can just keep it all going all the way across like this. And of course, now that we've changed all this, we can also be sure to change all of our pillars. Make sure to expand them into the ground, of course, if you haven't done so already. And again, this will really start to transform the look of the building already. So we just want to go around and make sure to change them all. Get some really nice looking supports. Oh, and we can actually also change the roof of this. I kind of totally forgot about that. We might as well do that now. We have the settler skin out anyway. There we go. And don't forget about these pillars here on the inside either. Then we can actually take out our stairs. We can add in 2 right over here. We of course can also add in a little bit of a railing, and we can start filling in a floor here for the next layer of our building. We can do that all the way through. Of course, you can change the layout on the inside if you, for example, need some bigger structure inside. Actually, let's leave a gap of 2 over here. But yeah, we can also have some railings going around. So yeah, for example, if you need to fit in like an industrial forge, of course, you'll need to leave some extra space because it's like 4 high that you need to fit those in properly. Then it's time for the next layer. We can expand this all by 2 more pillars. We can keep the same pattern on the sides of the building. So every other 2, we will raise them up. On the front, we only want to do the corners. And then on the other side here, we can do the same pattern. So every other 2, raise up those pillars. And we can also change the look of them right away so that they look all nice. So let's do that for all of these pillars. And for the inside, I'd probably go for the villager tier on the ceilings because they look quite nice. But of course, feel free to switch that up if you want to go for a different look. We can then also do that for the stairs as well. For the railings, there's actually a few variants that you might want to check out. The second variant is quite nice. The one with the ropes, also pretty cool. But again, totally up to you which one you prefer. Then here at the very back, we want to add a few quarter ceilings just like this. We can of course change the look of these right away. Then we want to add some supports underneath with some slope walls just like that. We can have some full walls around the outsides, of course. And then again, some slope walls to bring it back into the main building. We can add some roofs and of course some quarter roofs around the outside and some ramps at the very end to kind of create a little bit of a curve here. We can then change these roofs all to the settler tier so they blend nicely together. We can of course have all supports here on the side. We can do the same thing on the opposite side. We can have these arches underneath, just because that looks quite nice into the rest of the building. We can then also have some pillars on the sides, as well as some beams going across the bottom here, just as some extra supports. Change those all up to the settler skin, and of course have a window at the very end, just to create this a little bit of an addition, make this whole wall a lot less flat and boring. Then we can take out all quarter walls. We can bring them all the way up here. We actually want to expand this a little bit higher than this part of the building itself. So we'll do the exact same thing here on the other side, all the way up like this. And we can actually just change these to the Blanco Village version all the way through. And then the rest of these walls are pretty simple too. So we want to have some full walls here on the corners, a full wall there in the middle, and then we want to have some slope walls to create the shape of the building. We can then take out our window skins, and we actually want to make sure that we have the circular window right there in the middle. We want to have the settler tier all the way at the top, and then we can use the village tier over on this layer. And for these two, you can kind of play around with some of the variants that you like. You can kind of see which patterns you think look really good. There's actually a bunch of different patterns to pick from and choose from, but yeah, just play around with it, see what you like. There is a lot of options to choose from. But yeah, that's going to be the back of the building here. Then we're back here on the other side of the building, the front. We want to have our two walls here at the back. We want to continue this all the way across, and then we want to take out our quarter walls here as well as up there again. We can take out our slope walls to create the shape of the roof. We can have a full wall there in the middle, and finally we can have either a double door or maybe just a normal door for a balcony right there in the middle. Add in the actual door itself, of course, as well as some ceilings so that we can, again, create a little bit of a balcony. You'd want to add in some supports so that we can change those to the arches just to make it all look a little bit nicer. And of course, you'd want to have some railings around the outside, again, to make it look a lot nicer. We can take out the village tier here. We can change the entrance there. We can change those quarter walls as well as the quarter walls over here. We can change that into a nice round window again. Change the top ones to the settler tier, and then slowly just start to skin the rest of the walls. Again, there's a lot of variants to pick and choose from, whatever you like, but I think this looks quite nice for the whole build. And then I'm actually going to go with the ropes here for the balcony, but we're going to add a little bit more details. We're going to have the thin pillars here up to the top, and we can actually add 3 wide here in the front. We can change them to the village skins. And then for the time being, we want to have a full roof there. We can add in some roof corners over here. Then we can take out the roof, add the roof corners over here as well, and then take out our quarter ramps and just make a little bit of an edge around the outside here, just to make it all a little bit more interesting. And then of course we can change these. In this case, we're going to use the village skins just to give it a little bit of a different texture to look at. And there we go, we have a nice little balcony on the front of our building, again, to make sure that this wall is a little bit less flat. Then we can take out our walls. We can fill in most of this wall except for the first 2 right at the start. And then over here we can do the same thing except for the last 2. So we're going to just fill in these for now. We can take out these skins. We can actually add in the corners just like this. Then change the variance and we can fill in the entire way through here at the top. There we go. And then over here at the bottom, we can kind of just continue that pattern all the way through from one side to the next. There we go. And that is most of this layer done. We, of course, still have a little bit to do. We want to take out our quarter walls. We want to bring them all the way up just like that. And then the same thing over here at the other side. And again, we're going to do the exact same thing for this part of the wall. So again, have those quarter pieces and some full walls in the middle. Same over here. Take out the quarter walls at the bottom. The other quarter walls at the other bottom. And then we can add in some nice supports underneath, just as a little bit of details here for the future windows. We can actually take out our window skin. We can, of course, change the variance. First of all, we want to add in the tops here for both sections. And then we can add in the bottom as well before we change the skins here of those quarter walls along the side. We'll do the same thing over here. There we go. And then for the looks here of the little window sills, we can change them with the settler tier just to make the walls less flat. And of course, you can add some plants on there to add even more detail if you'd want to. And then it's up to the next layer. What we want to do over here is add in a little ceiling right there. We want to connect some stairs to it. Some more stairs going up to the other side here. And then we can fill in the top layer here with our ceilings all the way across, just to add another layer for the building. And of course, we can add in some railings. We want to have one over here. We'll have a half one right there, because otherwise it might interfere with the roof. And we'll have some railings along the sides, which of course we can all change to the right village variants, just to make it look a little bit nicer. There we go. And then we can, of course, also skin all of these ceilings all the way across. There we go. Then we'll start with the roof over here on this side. We want to go in by 2. We want to do the same thing over there, and then the same thing on the opposite side. Then across the top here, we actually want to come across with some quarter pieces all the way, and we want to add them here along the very edge to make sure that we have a bit of an overhang going on. Then we actually want to take out some of the quarter ramps, add a few pieces here along the side, and the same thing over here at the opposite side. There we go. Then we can take out some quarter ceilings, add them here along the edge to kind of expand this layer a little bit and create a balcony. We can change those to the village tier skins just like this. And then we actually want to take out our railings all the way out here in front. We can take out the settler tier skins, change the variance until we get this one. I quite like the look of this. We want to take that all the way across the front over here. Then we want to take out our ramps and connect them over here just like that. We can take out our quarter ramps to expand this just a little bit further to create a nice custom roof shape here. And then we want to have some shallow slope walls here at the very sides. We want to have some full walls as well. And of course, we want to have some nice pillars there on the corners. And then along the front here, we want to fill in that wall. We want to have 2 walls here and a nice door over there. We can, of course, add the actual door. We can change most of these to the settler skins, the middle ones at least. I would actually keep this one the Blanco version. We want to add our windows here off to the sides, and of course change those to the settler tier on the corners. As for these, of course, change those as well. And then we can even add in some nice supports here. There we go. And then finally, if it lets you, you can do a full railing. Otherwise, you can do a half one just on those corners. And then, of course, we can skin those again to make this whole balcony complete. And then we can take out the village tier here to skin the entire roof. So all the way across this section, but also just the rest of the roof. So it all kind of blends together quite nicely. There we go. And the same right over here, all the way across the roof. As for this section, we actually want to take out some quarter walls. We want to make sure to add them underneath here, and we can do that for this entirety. And then you can change out some of these arches. There's actually a few different arches that you can pick from, but yeah, this one will definitely do the trick. And you want to just do that to support this balcony. Why is this one not doing what I wanted to do? There we go. So yeah, we have this side of the building complete, and as you can see, this creates a quite nice looking corner here for the build. Then it's time for the other side of the building. We actually want to start with these quarter roofs, ramps at the bottom, all the way from one side to the other. Make sure to expand them one on the very outside. Then we can have our full roofs at the very end of the build. And then it's time to bring across our quarter roofs all the way along the top here, as well as actually along the sides over here, and all the way along the very bottom layer here too, all the way from one side to the next. And there we go. We want to take out a full roof, and we want to make sure to find the middle. So once I've played this, I should be able to still place two over here, two over there. We're not going to, but that's how you know you found the middle. We can do some roof corners right next to it, and then also over there, same over here, so that we create two of these shapes, which are gonna shape up the rest of the roof here. Then we want to take out our quarter ceilings. We want to have two right here in the middle. So that goes for both of them. Then we want to take out our quarter walls. We want to have one quarter wall there and another one over there on this corner. We'll do the exact same thing over here. There we go. And then we can have two here in the front, two here off to the side. Same over here on this side. We just want to follow that shape along. And then finally, we want to add two more quarter walls right on top of that. Now, this looks very weird, I know, but because of the variants that CKF offers, we can actually turn this into something very, very nice. First of all, we want to take out these arches again, and you want to switch until you have this variant, so that we can have some very tiny slope walls to fit in those gaps. And we're going to do those on top of here too, so that we can kind of shape up the same way as the rest of the building. Then we can fill in this side, of course. We can add our little normal settler walls there, just like this. And then we want to add our tiny windows right there in the middle, and we can use the village tier on those quarter ceilings. So now we have some very small windows, because unfortunately the only other way to do this is kind of with something like the frontier skin. Of course, if you just use the normal slope walls is normally what you do if you want a window like this. I think this should work on official, because technically you're not overlapping anything. But now what we want to do is we want to add in a few of these quarter roof pieces. So we want to have one right over there and then two right in front, and then the same thing over here on this opposite side, just like that. And then again we can continue that track over here, same over there, just like that. So we just get some nice additions for the roof here. And once we've done that, of course, all we need to do is add a little bit of a overhang on the very outside, same over here. And then we can of course skin all of this to the village tier, and that will transform this roof into one cohesive bit. So there we go. We can of course change all of these all the way across from one side to another, bring this all the way across the top. But yeah, you get a really nice and interesting looking roof in my opinion. Oops, you don't want to accidentally hit any of those pieces, of course, because they will skin back to quarter walls. So we want to carefully skin the roof here and just make sure that it all blends in together very nicely. There we go. So that's the roof almost done. We then want to take out our beams. We can go across the entirety of the top of the roof here from one side to another. Let's make sure that we don't have any misplaced ones, and I like to skin these as the setlet tier. There we go. And then if you want to, you can also of course do that on top of these. So we want to add those, and then finally at the little half beam at the very end. And we can also change the look of these, of course. There we go. And with that, you have a very nice looking roof with a bunch of nice details in there. And that's how you build this, well, cool medieval house with the stables to the side, with the other little side building, and a decent amount of space on the inside too, with different layers to use for whatever your needs are. Plenty of room. You can of course divide these insides into different rooms if you'd like to. But yeah, makes for a very fun build, just using those CKF cosmetics, so you can build this wherever you can use cosmetics. So official and any unofficial server, as long as they don't have cosmetics disabled. There we go. That was it for this build tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really do appreciate all the support, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for builds you'd like to see down in the comments below.